Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here, or TigerTank12, haven't called me, I don't really care, and welcome back to World of Tanks, where we're today going to be reviewing the Astron Rex 105mm. Now before you get your pitchforks and your torches out, I did not buy this tank. I want to be 100% transparent with you guys with my YouTube channel. If I'm going to be earning money or anything like that, I'm going to be transparent. I'm just going to show everything up front. There is no need to hide anything. I did not buy this tank, but I had quite a bit of a back and forth on should I make a video about the Astron Rex? Should I review this tank? And I've decided to review this vehicle because I want to be transparent with you guys and I want to show you guys how I ended up with the Astron Rex. I'm not afraid of the reaction that you might think that I bought this tank or something like that. But what I'm more scared of is that I don't want to promote loot boxes. That's not my goal here. I don't want to promote loot boxes on FIFA or on World Tanks because loot boxes do promote gambling, and I have gambled prior a little bit in my teenage years. It's been quite a lot of fun, but gambling is not good, especially if you don't know how to handle your finances. And I myself was a bit too extreme, so I can talk out of my personal experience. How did I end up with the Astron Rex? Well, if you play the Waffenträger event, which I have done quite a bit in the recent couple of days because I want to get the 3,000 bonds, I ended up with 4 engineer starter with the, by reaching level 30, and I also ended up with 2 more by playing the Waffenträger or the Blitzträger E110 because I got like 42 kills in total, and I also gotten 1 by just getting the Harriers box and then having a very lucky streak and getting an engineer kit in there. So in total I got like 7 of those loot boxes, which are the premium loot boxes, and I thought that's a pretty good number, for just playing the game and not buying it. So obviously I didn't expect much. I got like 7 loot boxes opened, and on one of them I did receive the Astron Rex, and on the other one I also received the T-77, which is a tier 8 American premium heavy tank, which I already owned, so I have an additional 10,000 gold, which I previously did not have. So I'm going to be really transparent with you guys. I now have 32,000 gold, so I did get like quite a bit of good stuff for free in the loot boxes. The thing is, I don't want to promote loot boxes, so that was the big, the big point there where I didn't really want to talk about that. I didn't want to promote the loot boxes. Now I kind of inadvertently just promoted the loot boxes by saying I got 7 of them, 7 free loot boxes, and I got like a very good return. But obviously these loot boxes, there is not I don't even know what the chances are of getting the Astron Rex. I think they had to put it open, and I think if you want to get a premium tank, it's 2.4% getting the Astron Rex. So your chances, the odds are definitely against you. How did I get so lucky? I don't know. Maybe because I haven't spent any money on World Tanks for over 1.5 years now. It could be something like that. But either way, I don't want to talk about that anymore. I just wanted to be upfront with you guys, transparent, and I think that's quite important. Let's talk about the tank, because the Astron Rex 105 is a very interesting vehicle. As mentioned previously in a video, I already talked a little bit about what we're expecting with the Astron Rex. It has a 5-shot magazine, and that magazine with 5 rounds or clip. No, it's a magazine. Yes, 5 shots in a magazine is pretty brutal. That's, I think, the only tank that I can think of with a 5-round magazine at tier 8 would be the Amex. The Saumur SM. That thing has 5 rounds, and I think also the non-premium one, the MX 5100. Now, for premium medium tanks or medium tanks, that is quite a novelty, having 5 rounds. That's pretty damn impressive. Some other tanks have 3 rounds or 4, but having 5 is pretty damn good. But obviously that comes with some very big downsides, but I think generally speaking it's a very novel tank, a very interesting tank as well. If you do like the gameplay style that this Astron Rex does provide, you are going to have a lot of fun with this tank. And I have to be honest, I've had a lot of fun with the Astron Rex. I've played, I think, about maybe 10, 15 games, 10 games, 9 games in total. And I've been doing quite well with this vehicle because I just like the gameplay style of flexible, I wouldn't say flexible, but rather mobile medium tanks that have an auto-loading system. And that is going to be what we're going to be talking about. First, let's talk about the firepower on this vehicle. I already have a couple of field modifications on this vehicle, so we'll have to talk about that as well. But let's talk about the armament that you have. You have a 105mm gun on a tier 8 medium tank. That's already pretty damn good. Most of the premium tier 8 medium tanks back in the days used to have 90mm guns. Now they are all the way up to 105, sometimes even higher, 122, if you're playing those Russian things or even Chinese premium medium tanks. Now, the average damage is 320 for a single shot, so that's about on par with all the other 105mm guns. The average penetration on this vehicle is rather lacking though. 190mm, there are going to be quite a few bounces in there, especially if you're playing against tier 9 and tier 10 vehicles. Remember, no premium tanks after I think the last 2-3 years will get any more preferential matchmaking, so no preferential matchmaking. You're going to be facing tier 9 and tier 10s. Your rate of fire, on the other hand, is actually not too bad, like 6.18 rounds per minute. And, you know, a reload time on this vehicle is about, well, 32.56 seconds to get your clip completely loaded. That is, for a medium tank, that's pretty brutal, to be fair. But you get 5 rounds in your magazine. That's pretty damn good, if you ask me. It takes 4 seconds per shell to reload every single shell into the gun, into the breech, and that is a very long time. So in total, getting those 20 shells out, you're going to be spending 20 seconds, you know, waiting for you to be able to fire all of those shells. A lot of things can happen in those 20 seconds. A lot of tanks can shoot you in those 20 seconds, so that's a very big downside. If you're not careful and if you do not take that into account, there are going to be a lot of situations where you just get caught off guard and they are going to stomp you. The reload time on this thing is very brutal, and it's the biggest weak spot of this tank. Having that 5-round magazine, well, that certainly comes with ups and downs, so that's definitely one of the biggest downsides, having that very long reload time and having that very long intra-clip reload. But the turret traverse speed is pretty damn good, 45.06 degrees per second. You have 10 degrees of gun depression, so this thing is amazing on ridge lines. Only 15 degrees of gun elevation though, so that's very important. You cannot fire upwards very good. So a lot of tanks, if they're above you, you're going to have quite a bit of a hard time getting them. The aim time is amazing with 1.7 seconds. I think it's 1.8, 1.9 if you're not using any kind of consumables and any kind of equipment or skills. But your dispersion is something that will really let you down. 0.4 at 100 meters. So this is a tank that is not very good at sniping at longer ranges. But I have to be honest with you once more. I have the feeling that the RNG on this tank is rather good. So like I didn't really have that much of a problem with the 0.4 accuracy. I still got quite a few rounds into the enemies, and somehow it doesn't bother me too much. I thought I would be a lot more annoyed with the 0.4 accuracy at 100 meters or dispersion, and it's not as bad as I imagined. Your DPM is about 1,980, and what we can take a look at right now before we go over to the survivability of this tank, you can see that the AP shells have a shell velocity of 945 and the APCR has a shell velocity of 1,181. The penetration also goes up to 250 millimeters. That is something that you probably will need to go back to if you're playing against tier 9 and tier 10 vehicles. But if you do play this tank in its designated role, where you can support, go to the side and go with some other medium tanks and maybe stay in a couple of bushes and, you know, just not be the one tank that gets focused, and be able to assist other tanks with taking on some vehicles, like being a big kind of platform that has 5 rounds at its disposal and can, you know, dish out about 1,600 damage in no time. I think that is where you can be really, really successful and where you can really shine with this tank. Now, APCR is something that I didn't really have to load as much because maybe I did not have to play against a lot of tier 10 tanks, but also because I mainly looked for weak spots and I mainly looked for tanks that I can penetrate, and I fired that at those tanks and I did prioritize. So if you're in this tank, you have to be able to make certain decisions, and those decisions are going to be quite important because they will determine if you're going to have a good game in this vehicle or if you're not going to have a good game in this tank. Moving on, you have 1,300 hit points, which is the average for a tier 8 medium tank. I think that's probably on the lower ends as well now. You have 85 millimeters of hull armor, 70 on the side, 50 on the rear. So this tank is not a complete glass cannon, but still 75 or 85 millimeters at the front will not save you. It's quite nicely angled though, so if you are at on a ridgeline, there are quite a few occasions where you can bounce shells because, yeah, it's angled really, really steeply. But if someone is right in front of you or above you, you're not going to be able to bounce anything. You have 220 millimeters of turret armor at the front, 100 on the side, and 75 on the rear, with a big, massive weak spot, which is the American tumor that every single American tank kind of needs, and that is this massive cupola. But to be fair, I think that's nice. Give those tanks weak spots. That's what I want to see in this game, because that is a very clear weak spot, a weak spot that you can obviously always abuse or not abuse, but, you know, make use of, because it's a very clear weak spot. And also the turret, although it's 220 millimeters thick, if someone is right in front of you, the angling is quite nice, but I think you can still pen that 220 at the front, because there are certain angles, especially from the side, where you can actually just shoot the kind of this out protruding gun mantlet that you have, where the gun is housed, and you can actually fire at that really easily, and you can fire down below where it's kind of flat, but the weak spot on top is actually right there, and it's going to negate all the 220 millimeters of armor that you have. So this tank does not survive very long if it's spotted, because it's a very easy target. But, you know, if you want to talk about profile, it's a very low profile tank, a very small one, and it is quite effective at being small. Mobility is another topic. This tank weighs 31.4 tons. The engine power is only 505 horsepower. So this vehicle is not extremely fast. It has a top speed of 52 kilometers. I did put a turbocharger on it because I need more engine power. And the thing is that the specific power to weight is pretty awful for a medium tank that needs to be fast, that needs to rely on its mobility. A lot of times you will not be able to reach the 57 kilometers per hour mark. You will be running around 40 kilometers, 45 kilometers per hour. So once more, it's an American medium tank with American kind of mobility. It's not extremely mobile, but it has really good traverse speed. So traverse speed of 65 degrees per second is pretty amazing. But the problem is you will mostly never reach the top speed of 57 kilometers per hour unless you're driving downhill. I think the soft stats have probably something to do with it as well. I think this vehicle has a bit of a problem getting up to speeds, and I think, you know, even though it only weighs 31 tons, it takes a while to get this little boy moving. And I've noticed that, yeah, repositioning sometimes is not as fast as with other vehicles. For example, the French autoloading tier 8 tanks, even I think the Lorraine. If we think about the Lorraine real fast, I think even the Lorraine is faster with the acceleration. It just accelerates faster. It feels it just feels faster, and I think the Lorraine is heavier than this tank. I'm looking for the Lorraine real fast. I could just, I could just do this and go with premium tanks as well, and French right there. Yeah, the Lorraine has better specific power to weight, so the Lorraine has better top speed, and it has better acceleration, and you will notice that when you are playing the Astron Rex, it just doesn't feel as fast as it maybe should be for a tank of this size. But one thing that this tank has is crazy reverse speeds. You have 33 kilometers per hour top speed going backwards, and you actually hit the 33 kilometers per hour top speed really, really fast. And it kind of goes completely against the everything I just said, because it reverses extremely well, but it doesn't go forward extremely well. So that's something you have to keep in mind. Now, speaking about concealment, it's a medium tank. And also, it is a small medium tank, so the concealment thing on this vehicle isn't too bad. Spotting, also, I think the top spotting is maybe 390. Yeah, 390 on the turret. I think you can make that work at tier 9 if you tier 8. Sorry, if you have the skills for it as well. You can back it up even more, and you can go above 400 meters, and you can play this tank a bit more like maybe a spotting medium tank that is in the second line or maybe on the flanks. But the thing is, your mobility is really lacking, your pen is really lacking. You have that very novel 5-round magazine, that clip or that magazine in your vehicle. If you are, if you fired all the rounds, which also you have pretty bad accuracy, at least on paper. I've had quite a lot of luck probably. You have a 32.56 second reload time, so this tank has a lot of things going for it, but also a lot of downsides. So I think that would mean that this tank might be balanced, and I think it doesn't seem to be too bad. But I'd say let's jump into the gameplay. Let's take a look at that 5-round magazine, what it's capable of, and how you can play this tank, and how you can take care of the Astron Rex 105 if you do face it on the battlefield. So let's do that right now. Okay guys, I've already checked the footage before I recorded, and this is going to be a game that I think is quite representative of when everything goes to plan. So this is kind of a representation when you have the ideal game and when you have the ideal matchup. I've already seen that the preview or the review part, where I do talk about all the different sides of this vehicle, it's already 17 minutes long, so this review might get to the 40-minute range. So this is a very long review, I think, and I will definitely take it into, or split it up into little parts, at least on the timeline, so you can just see the most important things about the vehicle. So before we talk about the verdict, or we give any kind of verdict on this vehicle, let's talk about this game. I have another game where I just want to show a very small portion of the game to show you guys what you can expect when everything kind of goes downhill. But in this game, you have the ideal situation at hand. You're playing tier 8. There are no tier 7s, no tier 6 tanks, no tier 9s, no tier 10s. This is where you can really live out your full potential and get the most damage done. So right here, we're playing on the map Mountain Pass, and we only have 190mm pen. Keep that in mind. But what you can see right here is also the capacity or the capability that you have when you're using a 5-round auto-loading vehicle. And right there, we're able to put one shot into the object 274A out of 3. One of them bounced, one of them did 0 damage, and one of them was a hit, but still we managed to light him on fire. But we still have 2 more rounds. So this unfortunate little Alti 432 is going to receive 2 more rounds into his face. And let's just take a look at that bloom. You can see that this vehicle really doesn't have any kind of time to aim in. Like, it aims in super quickly, and you just have basically aim time of 1.7 seconds. That's amazing. So we've done 1,000 damage. We could have done 500 more, but you know what? I'm not going to be complaining. That was the very first clip. We didn't take any damage. We bounced at least one round from the LT-432, and now we're trying to push with these heavy tanks, but I don't really want to be the one that pokes around this corner, because as you can see, there's a VK waiting, there's a Skoda T56 waiting, and probably some tank destroyers in the back. So I decide for myself to go back into the middle, into the fishbowl, and see if I can assist our team with a little bit of a flanking action. And you can see the Falcon over here, the T26, and the Pantera have kind of the same idea. This is where we can talk about the mobility of this vehicle. As you can see, we reach about 47, 45 kilometers per hour top speed. You don't really reach the 50 kilometers per hour top speed mark very quickly. You really have to go downhill. Other than that, I'd say you get about 47, 46. That's still more than fast enough to get you from point A to B. But if you are, competing against a Burrasque or a Peugeot 46, there are always going to be tanks that will be faster than you. So right now we have a very nice situation where we can shoot the Peugeot, we can shoot the Scorpion G, we have quite a few targets, and we were lucky once more and got a 0 damage hit on us into the tracks. And we've dealt another about 700 damage with 2 rounds. The Peugeot just died, we still have 3 rounds, and the thing is, sometimes it's a bit awkward when to reload, but I think 3 rounds, that's still about a potential damage of over 900, almost 1,000. Yeah, why not keep that? So we spot the G-Sor, which is another tank with a 4-round autoloader, and he immediately goes into the offensive, and he's like, you know what, I want to get a piece of that Astron X, or Astron Rex, and I managed to track him and do some more damage, but this time around we roll really low, 258, 256. That's something you'll be seeing on this vehicle as well, but still we managed to take him out. We got some assistance from the Super Pershing, and we're at 2,700 damage, and we haven't even played 5 minutes of this game, and that really shows you the damage potential you have with those 5 rounds. And also, well, you have about 30 rounds in your tank total, and you can see I'm running about 20 rounds standard, 10 rounds premium, and I don't want to dip into those premium rounds, because the premium rounds, if you're loading 5 of them, that's probably going to be somewhere around the line of 25,000 credits that you'll be paying for that kind of firepower. But we can also see the Skoda T56 over there, and we do have a bit of luck. You only have 0.4 accuracy, but I mean, look at us. We're hitting the weak spot right there on the vehicle. But unfortunately, the 3rd round doesn't hit the lower plate. The 4th round goes somewhere, and the 5th round I don't even know. I just fired it over there, and we still end up with over 3,000 damage dealt. So far, we can also talk about the armor. The armor does hold up. We bounced 1 shot from G-Sor, and that is right on the turret. So that's probably one of the thickest parts of the armor, with 220 millimeters thickness right there. So I think there are some lucky bounces sometimes. It's really weirdly angled, this vehicle. It does have quite a few rounded shapes, and some weird angles that are not very easy to not very easy to hit, or sometimes you get lucky, or sometimes you get really unlucky. But what I have to be honest is the 4-second intra clip reload. In this situation right here, it's not a big deal, because they aren't really attacking us, and we have all the time in the world to shoot them. This is the ideal position you'll find yourself in when you play it as a support vehicle, because then no one really, as long as they don't really pay a lot of attention to you, you can just farm the damage, and you can do really well, and you can do some serious damage to the enemies. So we have dealt over 4,000 damage. The thing is, you have to keep in mind your accuracy is not very good. Your average damage is decent, I'd say, but your penetration is also pretty bad if you're using the AP shells. But this was an ideal match where everything worked in our favor. Let's jump into a game where there are some very unideal situations where things do go south very quickly and where this tank does struggle and where you can see where it's not going to be doing very well. So let's jump over and look at that as well. So the second game I prepared for you guys shows off what can happen when you're too aggressive with the Astron Rex. This is also a tier 10 match where we're going up against tier 9 vehicles and tier 10 vehicles. And that will have a drastic impact on your performance. And it just shows you how adaptable you have to be when you're playing this tank. Some small mistakes can cost you very dearly. I think that's what is like the highest stake when you're playing French or Czechoslovakian medium tanks, because all of these autoloaders have that problem of, well, being utterly defenseless and sometimes being way too aggressive, and that costs a lot of these players and a lot of these vehicles, because you have to be very careful what you're doing, because mostly you don't have armor. The Astron Rex goes kind of into the same direction. This vehicle does not perform very well when it's the main target, when it's the main vehicle that is trying to dominate a ridgeline or trying to, hold a specific sector, because you have too many weak spots. Your vehicle is very easy to take care of, so you have to play this tank as a supportive vehicle. And you can see I was way too aggressive right there. I lost my support and I ate two very, very painful shells immediately at the beginning. And there's a Foch coming in as well that I will notice on the map in a second, who is trying to finish us off. So yeah, in a situation like this, well, what can you expect of a tier 8 medium tank? We get very lucky that we have some support right here. We unfortunately get another shot into the track of the Foch, and that one does not track or do any damage, but we're still alive, but we've basically lost all of our HP in a very quick succession. That's how fast you can lose your HP and how fast you can die in this tank. The armor isn't bad, but the armor is not going to protect you from tier 10 tanks and even other vehicles, other tier 8 vehicles, because your armor layout is just not made for these kind of engagements. So that's why it's so important to really go into this supporting role, because if you're a supporting vehicle, you are really powerful with that 5-round magazine. And I want to show you guys what I mean by that. You can see we have an Object 430U. He cannot fall back. He has a Stritzwagen on his back on the mountain. He has a Centurion Action 10 coming in, and he has a T-34B trying to, score some hits if the Object 430U is trying to get away. What I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to support this guy, and that's where this tank can really shine. So we put one into the Centurion Action 10. We don't need to load the gold. We bounce off the turret because it was a bad shot, but we don't need the additional penetration because we are able to do damage to the Centurion Action 10. What's really important right there is that I do not get hit by the Stritzwagen. I noticed I was spotted, so I immediately drove backwards, and right there we put one more into the Centurion Action 10. We keep him tracked, and we have one more shell loaded for the T-34 or for the Stritzwagen 103B. So this is where you can be really effective, but obviously there are not a lot of situations where this is going to be working out. We get really lucky right there. We eat a shell in our tracks, and now because of the mobility, which is still, even though it's not as great as other medium tanks of the same tier like the Preto, it still is quite mobile. It's going to be able to get you from point A to B in enough time, at least fast enough that you can run away from the Stritzwagen 103B or the T-34B. So far, I mean, this game looks like it's a win. What for us is really important now is that we can support this SU-130 PM, who is really aggressive, and I wouldn't expect him to, drive as far into the enemy territory as... I wouldn't have done that. But you can see you have a lot of these critical hits, but no damage shots on this tank. And I just have the feeling that has to do with the amount of pen that you have on this vehicle, because you can pen the track, but you are unable to go through the hull. Right there, we put one into the Stritzwagen, we put two into the T-34B, We bounce one on our turret because the turret is quite strong if they don't have enough time to aim for the weak spots. And you can see, you know, we've dealt 2,899 damage because we've played smart. We've had a very bad start, but we managed to turn around. We managed to, you know, fall back and keep in mind that we are a supportive tank, that we are not the tank to be at the front line, because if we would have stayed with the Object 430U, the T-34, the Action 10, the TheFrXion would have probably taken us out very quickly, and it would have been just basically worthless. We would have been worthless to our team. We wouldn't have had a good game. Our team would have lost a vehicle for no reason at all. And in the end, we still managed to be quite supportive and to assist that Object 430. But right there you can see the limitations you have with the AP shells at tier 10, and also the long intro clip that you have to take on that TheFrXion. But I'm going to switch over to free cam real fast, and we're going to talk about my verdict on the Astron Rex. This tank is very special because of its magazine, because of its playstyle. It has a big weak spot. It's not overpowered in any kind of sense. The accuracy is not the greatest. The penetration is not the best. No, the mobility on this tank is a bit lacking. But I think that kind of equals it out. It evens things out. What's really powerful, obviously, is the 5-round magazine. That 5-round magazine can allow you to do a lot of damage in a very short amount of time. And obviously, that 4-second intra-clip reload is a very, very annoying thing, but it balances things out once more. I think, generally speaking, this tank is not completely broken. It can be extremely powerful, I think, in the right hands. I've seen some players do really, really well in the Astron Rex. But I think it can also be a tank that does not fare very well in the hands of maybe a very unexperienced player. But I really like this tank. I've enjoyed it a great deal. I got it for free, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video. And I can't really say anything negative of the Astron Rex. I think this time around Wargaming have produced a premium tank that is kind of balanced. Obviously, we can talk about, does it need a 5-round magazine? Could it have been a 4-round magazine? Would that have been maybe, you know, a bit even more fair and made the tank, you know, a little bit worse with the 4-round magazine? Because I think I really like this tank, and I've had some really good games. I don't think it's overpowered. I don't think it's too powerful, but it might just be, I don't know, I have the feeling that the accuracy is not correct, because 0.4 should be pretty bad, but somehow I still managed to get some snipes at distance. But, you know, so far I think this is a tank that is, sometimes it can be obnoxious when you go up against it and it can unload a complete clip into you. But I think most of the time it's not going to be as obnoxious as some other tier A premium tanks that are in the game, as the Burasque, for example, which just has that pretty damn crazy flash damage of 760 really fast, and where the players are mostly just relying on APCR ammunition. I think this has the potential to be really annoying if the players are using only APCR, but I still think it's quite balanced out if you have to go up against it. There are a couple of weaknesses. If you are in a fast tank, I think this tank will probably not be able to run away from you, because it just doesn't have the acceleration, it doesn't have the top speed to stay away from a fast medium tank or something like that. So, you know, if you want to move, you have to move early with this vehicle. But either way, I've enjoyed this tank. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. As always, comment, like, and subscribe. Tell me what you think about the Astron Rex, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Until then, have a good one. Peace out.